Thank you. First off, I haven't made much imprint in the Eiffel community, so a short introduction. I'm the source code management team lead at Access Communication, working in tools, same as Magnus and other Axians you have been in contact with. I've been working in 9+ years in the source code management space with Git and Gerrit, and I'm a Gerrit maintainer. So that's sort of how I slipped into this topic. Short vocabulary to get some. I'm coming at this from a Git perspective, but to make it more globally, some vocabulary might be in order. So the source code state is basically a snapshot of source code file tree. Source code delta is the difference between two source code states. So the Git equivalent of this would be a Git commit. And then we have a mutable source code definition, which is the Git branch, and the immutable source code definition, which would be the Git tag. So the background is that at Axis, as you all know, we are investing quite heavily in Eiffel, and as such, we wanted to have a full commit tag in Eiffel, modeled in Eiffel, so that we could, for tracing purposes, so in where's my commit, you could answer that question from looking at Eiffel, tracking relationship between source code states, tags, and branches. And if we end up needing this full commit tag in the future, it's not possible to backfill links in existing events. We would have to rewrite the entire event structure. This is basically, I believe, the main three reasons why we wanted the full commit tag in Eiffel. Looking at this, we found that the open source version of the Eiffel Gerrit Events plugin did not support this, and rewriting the plugin was deemed too expensive, so we decided to write our own Gerrit plugin, which led me to investigate, stumble across these issues. So the current SCM events are source change created, which is when a pre-integration stage source code delta is created. So for instance, a Gerrit change or a GitHub pull request or GitLab merge request. So how in Git, this is pretty much the relationship between a commit and a target branch of the said pre-integration stage. And it seems to be modeled quite heavily around the patch set created event coming from Gerrit. My perspective, well, of course, I'm colored by previous interactions with Gerrit. Then we have the source change submitted, which is the integration of said source change created event into the target immutable source code definition or Git branch. And it also describes the relationship between a commit and the branch that is integrated into, which also seems to mirror the Gerrit event change merged. So the current Git perspective, when I'm trying to implement this in a producer of source code events, I found some shortages. The first is that there's an implied review step. If you create a source code submitted event, you have to create a source change created event, regardless of if there was any Gerrit change or GitHub pull request in the background. There's no shared ancestry between branches, since both the source change created event and the source change submitted event is basically the relationship between a branch and a commit. If you want to model the same commit on two different branches, you have to do that with four events. And there's no concept of immutable references. For instance, Git tags, which are quite prevalent in the key element in source code management. The implied review step is, as I stated, because the SCS has a mandatory link to SCC. So, for instance, if you have a delivery from an upstream branch, upstream repo, that you perhaps have a local clone of an upstream repo for securing access during network breakdowns and as such. If you wanted to model the branch update of this upstream repo, you would have to pretend that there was a source change created event. So someone made a Garrett change or a GitHub pull request, even though there weren't. Also, merges typically doesn't have a, depending on the environment, doesn't have a linked source change, Garrett change or a GitHub pull request directly linked to the actual commit. The no shared ancestry is quite problematic, because in Git, creating a new branch from an existing commit is very expensive. It's just one object you create or update. Whereas in Eiffel, if you want to model the entire commit DAG, you would have to create, since the events are the relationship between a commit and a branch, you would need to create a new event for each commit that was reachable from this new branch. And in our case, we have a replica of the OS Linux. So creating a new branch in that repository would mean that we would have to create 1.8 million events, which is quite absurd. And the tags, no concept of tags, it's currently modeled by sort of forcing composition define and artifact created into some sort of description of a Git tag, which could be unsatisfactory. So my proposition for a new event structure is that what we should model, what I think this should be modeled, is when a new source code delta is introduced. So when a new commit is available on the server you're monitoring or whatever. So this could mean that you are pushing to a feature branch. This could mean you're pushing a commit as a patch set on a change or anything. This is just a commit available on the server, reachable from some reference. And the mutable source code definition updated, which is when a branch is updated, you would get an event for that. And also, as a description of the change requests, the Garrett change and GitHub pull request, you would have a mutable source code definition change request created, which is quite a mouthful, but it would basically mean that someone wants to update the branch in the Git case with one or several commits, and also have one event for a tag being created. And why from working in the Garrett space and with Garrett events, I fell into the trap of using change merged as a basis for branch updates, basically. And I've fallen into the trap once or twice, and it always have to rethink and use ref updated instead. So basically model everything around when a branch is updated, not when a change is merged. So this would be sort of a picture of, I don't know if you can see my cursor, or if anyone's listening.
No, we can't see it, I believe. Yeah, sorry, yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, sorry.
Still, so yeah.
Yeah.
If you type L, you'll get a laser pointer instead. Because you're using Google Docs, right?
Yeah. Now it looks professional. So basically, what we have here is these green ones are the source code change created, so the Git commits. And the yellow ones here are the SOD definition definition change request events. And the blue ones here are the ref updated, or the source definition updated, or the branch update. What you basically would have in a Garrett scenario, someone pushes a change, which is described by STCR1, and this change has a points to commit, which is described by the SCC1, so these two together basically describe a Garrett patch set. So if you update that change with a new patch set, you would get a new source definition change request and a new commit or a source code change created event. This is just to model that another change is being pushed on top of this change. And when these are changed, when these are merged, the source definition is updated. So you get a source definition updated event, which has a link to both change requests that were merged during the source definition update, which in turn has links to all the commits. And this would also make the, as you can see, if you wanted to make create a new branch that references this SCCC3, it would only require one the source definition updated event to do that. So that's basically my takeaway from a consumer of the Eiffel API or Eiffel structure, and as an event creator implementer. The floor is, as they say, open.
I think it looks great, at least from, I mean, I haven't dug into all the details or investigated different scenarios, but superficially, I think it looks great. Migration from the current schemas or current events to this would, of course, inflict some pain, probably, but it's doable.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the comments I would have it's a bit hard to see, at least when all these abbreviations are new, what the exact mapping would be to the current schema, if it's even possible to map back and forth between these.
Could you back one slide, Sven? We can see all the long words.
Yeah.
But I figured just like when introducing the SCCC, the first SCCC in each repository could have a previous version link to an SCS. So that way you should be able to tie the new style source change DAG into an existing one without any huge problems, I think.
Yeah, we have to have some sort of agreement that once you reach an SCS event, then you have to discard the branch field of that event, basically.
Yes.
But that would be doable. Same with you could basically do the same thing with the SDU events, that you could point to the latest SCS event. And it sort of branches the actual source code change and the reference at that point.
So if I get it right, then it will be like a Big Bang change. It's not possible to use, or
you could use them in parallel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or you mean you would translate, sort of do a complete backfill, so you represent the whole history.
I mean, if we won't replace all the producers and consumers at the same time, at least we need to do it in a well-known order then. So we first replace all consumers with something that can understand the new structure at the same time as the old one, of course, and then replace the producers after that. Yeah, I was thinking if we could have both at the same time in some way, but
that shouldn't be impossible. Since this new the Sven proposal is a richer representation, translating from that representation until to the old one should be totally possible, I think. Again, superficially, it should be possible. The other way around would not be possible, I think.
I think you would have to, if migrating to this new system, you would have to make sure that all the consumers are aware of both representations. So you would still have some sort of legacy events lingering forever in your Eiffel deployment, or in Eiffel definition, event definitions, or what you should call it. But yeah, of course, you have to make sure that all your consumers can process both APIs.
So some other reflections then. Well, one is that that we mentioned this morning as well. Matthias mentioned the CDF or the CD events that we are defining there. We need to, I mean, if we make such a big restructure now of the Eiffel protocol, the source change part of it, we should really try to be aligned with any ideas there as well. To not, I mean, since we are aiming at making the new protocol compatible with Eiffel, we shouldn't introduce something new in Eiffel which will not be compatible to what anyone is looking for in the other new protocol. It's just a reflection that we need to make sure that, of course, we cannot be aligned on everything, but that somehow that the idea is at least acknowledged in that community as well. And then maybe some historical comment you asked about. You said it looks like Garrett has been the source when defining these events, and that's partially true, I would say. It's, if I should just make a historic look up, the proprietary Eiffel protocol, the legacy one, their clear case was the SCM system in Ericsson at that time, mostly. Git was gaining some ground, but it was still clear case. And so the old event types that we use, which are actually the new event types in the Open Eiffel, is very much the same as the old ones. They have slightly different names, but the structures are somehow similar in them. And for sure, Garrett was then the SCM system of choice when we moved from clear case. And therefore, Garrett has also played a big impact on what the events look like. So you're totally right that Garrett is one important base for it. That's just a comment. Then I'm thinking, well, what was I thinking? Yeah, we have actually discussed this, or there have been some questions internally in Ericsson as well. Why don't we specify these things more in Eiffel so we can stop looking in Git? But then at the same time, people have thought that why should we actually duplicate what is already in an external system such as Git? Why mirror everything, or why should we try to graph the same things as already exist in Garrett? What is the use for that? I actually kind of missed that in your why slide there. Some discussion on why would it be necessary to not copy, not have it in Garrett.
Magnus is better to answer that question, but I think one is to have it's beneficial to have a tool that only understands Eiffel. It doesn't talk Garrett or Git or Jenkins or anything else. It just processes Eiffel events. There's a benefit to that, but I think if there are any other benefits, I think Magnus can answer that better than me.
We don't duplicate all data into Eiffel anyway when it comes to, I mean, artifacts or whatever. I mean, we have always, very often at least, relations to logs stored outside Eiffel, artifacts stored outside Eiffel, and of course we need to reach out to other systems which we will reference from Eiffel. I guess we will not get away from that. So, and I think that is, to me, the source chain, so the Git references could still be there, and we could, if we need more information on what branch was used for this, or details about tagging, maybe, even though that is actually also requested in Ericsson, that we need an event for tagging. You could ask Garrett for those things, but then you have the question of mutability and immutability and such as well. I need to consider.
Yeah, to be clear, this is not a full representation of the Git commits either. It's just what has happened on the source code side. Because basically, if you want to find out which commits are reachable from which branch, etc. It can be quite expensive depending on what sort of Git server you're using, and what sort of interface you are using to that Git server. Whereas in Eiffel you only have the relationships described, basically. So you could traverse in Eiffel from a release artifact created back to a certain commit only using the graph representation in Eiffel. Whereas if you don't have that, you would need to go back to ask your Git server where this at one point or one step in that chain you would have to step outside of Eiffel and ask something else.
I guess the commit ID is in the event today, so that shouldn't be a problem to find.
Yeah, this was about why you want to represent the old commit DAG in Eiffel, not not changing the event structure. There are two steps. If you want to have the whole commit DAG in Eiffel, then you will certainly run into these problems, and this would be a better, in my opinion, better event structure. But the question was, why would you want to represent the whole commit DAG in Eiffel? And that would be why. So
I would say that the reason for having source change events at all is that they could very well trigger actions. You would want them to trigger actions in the pipeline or in a pipeline. And if you're emitting Eiffel events, you might as well link them properly. So not having the previous version link, for example, would be a waste, since you're going to want to have all the events anyway. Not necessarily all the historic events, but anyone, you wouldn't have to choose or make the choice we made to backfill with the whole Git history. You could choose any cutoff date or that you want, or only from now and going forward. But I wonder what would be the option? Because are you suggesting that source change events wouldn't exist at all? Or you would lose the triggering ability?
You're asking if we want to get rid of source change events?
No, not really. But I mean, you're asking perhaps as an advocate for the devil, why would we want to have this anyway? At all. Yeah. And I would say it's for the triggering, and because if you want to express a cause, you would want to link to something anyway. Now that could be, sure, you could have just a very simple, a single event expressing that, this commit was made available in this branch, for example, and then nothing else. You wouldn't have any links and no previous version links and so on. But for that to work, you would have to emit such events anyway, and not having the previous version links would be a waste. It could very well be the case that if you want to efficiently compare different software baselines, for example, could be that Eiffel is too slow for that, depending on your event repository, since you would have to possibly traverse upstream, downstream searches involving thousands of levels deep, for example. that might be very efficient. So it could be more efficient to go straight to the source. Git is very efficient when it comes to those things. But I think that's something that could be solved with caching as well. So I think it's definitely beneficial to have it within Eiffel. But I do agree that yes, it is information that is available externally. And it's not entirely unreasonable to suggest that we should use the external sources instead.
At least when it's immutable, I think we can use external sources, but yeah.
The immutable, I didn't quite catch the last part about immutable.
I mean, if the data in the external system is immutable, then you can rely on that data always being there. If it's mutable, you might want to represent it in an Eiffel event to say that this is the state of that external data when this event happened. But if it's immutable, then of course it doesn't really make sense to copy it.
The one point of this is especially in source code, commit date is quite has a special case because you can a commit that was created 3 years ago might introduce a bug that you find today, and then you don't have a cause link to that in Eiffel, for instance, if you want that. That sort of thing. The past affects the future in a different way when it comes to source code events than perhaps any other events that I've seen.
Why will we not have an event for that today, do you mean? I mean, we have the source change created events today.
Yes, but you haven't. If you haven't the whole commit DAG represented in Eiffel, you don't have that event from 3 years ago. Or we don't, because we didn't have Eiffel 3 years ago. If we would not create the whole historical commit DAG, that event wouldn't exist at the time when the sort of link the bug would.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get. Yeah. In some case, I guess we have created events for old, or created event instances for very old events, so to say. Artifacts, for example, and such things. That's the same with artifacts then. Old versions of things.
It's sort of, and we stumble also with the current structure where the events are. I think one of the big problems is the events aren't. There's no event to model a commit. There's only events to model the relationship between a branch and a commit. And when we now are working on creating Eiffel events for tags, we would need a link to a source change submitted event. But the tag space and the branch space in Git are orthogonal. There's no relationship between. There's no direct relationship between a tag and a branch.
Right.
So you could have a tag that's so which SCS do you choose? So the SCS you choose that the tag references it doesn't necessarily have a significance when it comes to the tag. And if you wanted to see that, is this tag on this branch, you would have to, for each commit in this branch, go to every other SCS event and look if the tag references that event. So it would be quite a backwards lookup. You wouldn't have the tagging a branch doesn't make sense in Git words, so to speak, and that is what we do basically today with Eiffel.
We don't tag at all. I mean, we don't use tags at all. Oh well, how we use it actually in Ericsson is that we use artifact created events when we set tags instead. So it's a software artifact.
Yeah, we sort of mimic them with the composition defined and artifact created. I believe that's based basically on how you model tags.
I might sound unnecessarily critical to this suggestion. That's not at all my intention. I just wanted to understand it better. I mean, I have also thought of that we have. I mean, the current two source change events that we have, they don't match all needs, of course. And well, maybe my initial thought there was actually that we should more break out the actual source change object from the created and the submitted events somehow. So we have an object that is either a Gerrit change or a pull request or a merge request in GitLab, represented by one object in Eiffel more. But that's a total different way.
Yeah, that's not doable because you will update that change request. You can't update the links of an existing. That change request would have to have some sort of at least a reference to a commit to make it even viable. And if you update the Gerrit change or the GitHub pull request, you would have to create a new event. So you would have a series of events that would describe this pull request or Gerrit change.
Probably.
No matter what you do, due to the immutability of Eiffel events, which is of course necessary.
Yeah, of course. What happens when you squash a merge, a change, for example, or when in a pull request, when you squash them? That means that there are a lot of events that are not anymore representing anything in Git, or how would that? What would happen to the event graph in that case?
You mean this is, it's not the same, but basically this would be somewhat the same. This is sort of dead and not reachable from anywhere. I don't think that this link of previous version of a source definition change request is viable. So it would lead to a sort of headless events in the Eiffel structure. Yes.
In what way? I mean, say if you have 5 different commits to the same pull request in GitHub, then
then you would have, this would be the pull request in GitHub, and you would have 5 commits here.
Yeah, and what happens then with
then when you squash it, you would have to create a new representation of the pull request, and this would have only the squashed commit. And then you could have the previous version link that would show that this pull request previously had 5 commits.
If you then find those old SCCC1 and SDCR1 events somehow in your event repository, they will not represent anything that exists anymore.
Yeah, this depending on if they are referenced in Git. If they aren't, then hopefully you have a Git GC removing them. But yes, but they are not representing. They're basically not representing an object. They're representing an action. So that action was performed.
Right.
There was a pull request the pull request was changed in such a way that there was these 5 commits were referenced from it. Then it was changed one more time, where the commit was squashed. So it's the action was still performed, but the objects that was the result of the action might not be the same as the artifact created. You might create an artifact for a test case, and then it has a short lifespan of 6 months or so because it's just a test artifact. But the artifact was still created even though it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting ideas, I think, and of course, I don't want to dismiss them.
Yeah, I don't think they're fully baked. So there would be a lot of corner case hashing back and forth, and since it wouldn't mean that you could discard and delete the source change created and source change submitted event from Eiffel, since they would need to be referenced by the new structure. So basically, you would have and since all the consumers would have to consume know how to consume both event structures, then you would basically have a situation where you could go for status quo and don't use the new version of the Gerrit plugin, or and just keep on using source change submitted, source change created event. Or you could migrate to the new structure. So they would basically be two parallel structures in the sort of global Eiffel perspective. But at your, even though your local deployment might only have one or maybe both of them.
Well, I don't really, I'm not sure I agree there. I mean, because we have quite a strong rule in Eiffel saying that whatever you can say whatever you want, but when you say it, you need to follow this structure when you say it. I mean, how you say it is not volitional. So if you are to talk about the source change in some way, there should be only one way to do it. So I don't think that we should, of course, in the period we could have two different structures and one could be deprecated and then we remove it later on, but we shouldn't continue having two different paths of representing the same thing in some sense.
Yeah. Basically, I think that would be what happens, but to have one structure deprecated and the other one being the sort of accepted. Yeah. But I basically mean that it wouldn't be, you would have sort of a period where both structures are supported, so you don't have to do you don't have to decide right now we have to do all the work to change event structure, and you could basically work them in parallel for a while if you have from both Git to GitHub and Gerrit, and it sort of makes the transition period less painful.
Yeah. We had a similar discussion on the environment defined event recently, where we introduced the what was it called now, Magnus? When we
runtime environment link.
Runtime environment, replacing data.image. And there we currently have two ways to define more or less the same thing, actually, which is not really what we should have long term. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I understand that this is potentially very painful, and but I think this would be for my horizon, and as far as I've tried to break this, it seems like a better way forward than the current structure.
I think at least to me it takes some time to digest this and understand the consequences and the complete scope of it and see our story. So I guess it would help to have even more examples of different things. But
yeah, there's sort of implications of lookup performance. Today you can give me all source change submitted events for this commit, and you would see which branches that commit is on instantly. And with this structure, you would have to traverse a graph to see it. So there's sort of mirroring discussions you've had earlier, that one sort of database is preferable if you want to look something up, and one sort of database is preferable if you want the whole graph history. It's not there are downsides to it. That's what I'm trying to say.
I guess we should use what we've talked about here to fold it into the SIG events discussion, as you said earlier, Emil, to make sure that they become reasonably compatible. And
I sort of skipped that previous. Someone mentioned that, and also with the I don't know if that is what's supposed to mimic the we talked about the Git subtree and Git submodule problems.
Yeah, that's another issue that we should see if we could perhaps try to solve. If we're reworking the structure anyway, we might as well see what we can do about that.
Yeah, to see what other problems we might solve. If this is quite a big change, and you want it to be as you don't want to do such a big change again soon to fix other stuff.
Yeah, I think submodules and subtrees could be solved with another link type probably.
Yeah.
At least in the new structure. I don't know if it's doable in the old SSE or the current SSE SCS necessarily.
I don't think that we represent those relationships today. We have submodules, of course, somewhere as well in different repositories, but we probably don't represent the relations between the repository and their submodule repositories today.
One question here. So when looking at the SIG events, the idea there, as currently right now, is on a brief draft, is you're speaking about a change event, and we call it change there, so it's Gary changes or pull requests in GitHub, and there the idea is to have a created event, change created, change reviewed, change merged, change abandoned, and change updated. So there the idea is to actually have if somebody's in reviewing the change. Have you had any thoughts about this?
I don't see how that information is vital for upstream events. So if someone that would be sort of another meta layer to me at least, that someone why wasn't this change merged? It was because why isn't this change merged? It's because this individual thought it shouldn't be because of reasons.
You could be using a triggering scenario as well, of course. As soon as someone has reviewed a change, then you might want to trigger off something else, some other activity.
Yeah, but that would not be reviewed. That would be like that this change is, or at least from my perspective, it would be most useful to be so change accepted, sort of a pre-integration step. So this change is ready for integration.
That's another issue in the protocol repo, and I think the last thing said in that discussion thread was that we will use confidence level modified to express approval or disapproval of a source code change.
I think we have an issue on adding a source change approved event. Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So basically, if you don't look at this as object but as actions, then the change was created, but in the same. But that does not say anything about the change itself is not updated because someone else has an idea about it, so to speak. So I think a confidence level updated seems like a reasonable way forward.
But judging by you go ahead, Matthias.
Okay, I thought you could. I was just wondering about coming back to the SIG there. If I guess if the change is abandoned, that would also be a confidence level model by confidence level modified then.
Maybe.
Could be.
Yeah. When it comes to branches, now if I got it correct, you thought, sorry if I miss here, but source definition updated was kind of like if you create a branch, you haven't sent one of those events. Was I correct there?
Source definition updated in the Git perspective is ref update, but in the ref's heads namespace, to be technical. So it's basically if you create a branch, or if a branch was updated. So if you push something to a branch, if you submit something to a branch, anything like that. So anytime a branch reference is updated. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so then if you would delete the branch, you would also send a updated event then?
Yeah, it's quite possible. Like sort of the same as ref update for a deleted branch that you would have the previous version would be the old state, and the base would be sort of the null equivalent of Eiffel. You could model that. That way you would also have sort of create a branch. What is it? Branch repositories. So you could track down what old deleted branches pointed to in the past. Sort of a ref log in Eiffel. I don't know if that will be pointed.
But it seems a little bit concerning to me regarding the SIG events discussions that they, based on the, of course, early proposal, but it seems like they're sort of falling into the same trap of not sort of, I don't know if it's a mistake or not. I mean, Git is the totally dominant source control system out there, but Sven's proposal goes closer to sort of the underlying data structures in Git. And I think they apply quite well to other source control systems as well, while the SIG events proposal is more sort of centered on user actions and doesn't map to the underlying reality. But when you're trying to model reality and you've chosen the wrong model, you get into weird things, just as Sven discovered while doing this. So I think it seems that there is a risk that the SIG events source control proposal might fall into the same trap. And I think we should be active in that area to make sure that we're not going in that general direction, and that whatever proposal eventually is fleshed out is sufficiently compatible with Eiffel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, Emil?
I would even take it one step further and more or less present. I mean, if we think this is a good approach, then we should more or less present this exact picture, because this has nothing to do with Eiffel today. I mean, this is not specific to Eiffel. We can present exactly the same picture to SIG events and say, try to get acknowledgement from us there to see if this is the way to go there as well, because we could use the same names there.
Basically, yes, yeah.
Of course, the links. The links might differ then, but as soon as we have some okay to use links in the events, then this picture should be used there as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the general ideas of separating updates of mutable or immutable references and change requests is that's sane regardless of links and not links. And I think the current model looks incorrect. SIG events. But you're right. I mean, it could be that if the other folks in SIG events aren't sufficiently interested in source changes, they might be happy if we propose something nice for them.
Thank you. Thanks.
I totally agree, and I think Matthias, you're right as well. There hasn't been too much thought into the actual source changes, or maybe not the commits as such in the SIG events. I believe the focus has maybe been around pull requests mostly. So what do we need to? How do we need to mimic the pull requests in the events, more or less? And then we have a commit in there as well, but it's a pull request that we merge, and it's the pull request that everything works on, and so on. And then we build something, of course, from a commit, but it's based on that pull request change or whatever, pull request merged. So of course we have some way to go there, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the comment you had there, Magnus, about modeling. Actually, if you're not going through a pull request, but you're committing directly to the main branch, how would that look? So I think there's some work done there, and I don't know, the people there have been thinking too much in the space. So I agree with everybody that if we have something, we'll probably propose it.
No, if that would help, I would. I could present the same thing in that community if you feel that would be a good way forward.
Just a thought. We have Eiffel announcement event, I think.
Yes.
Will it not fit for any use case when we are talking about any references updates for such matters? Have you given any thought about using this Eiffel announcement published event to be making sure that we are not introducing so many more events than what we have already, and try to utilize what we have? I mean, it could be a potential event that we can already use now.
How do you see that the Eiffel announcement events? In what way is that suitable for a reference update? Sorry about that. Neighbors.
Oh, I thought it was your stomach.
This went on this morning, and I hoped it would stop, and it did, but now it has continued. So my basic question is, in what way is a reference update an announcement?
We got your question, Sven.
Yeah. So we have certain things in the data field where we can probably say that, okay, this is what has been updated with respect to this repository. We have URI field where we can say that this is the repository that was used, and probably there are certain fields that were updated. I mean, at the announcement published event, it has like heading, body, URI, and CVRT. Probably if we could change something in this particular event, like having like an new field where we can say whether it was created or removed, something like that, will it not help us in saying that the references was either updated, removed, or created newly?
I would vote against reusing events for having sort of a blank slate event to describe a lot of different things. Basically, from past experiences, it's a bad pattern that always has led us into painting oneself into a corner. So, for instance, you'd have to have the consumers would have to first find an event and then start interpreting text fields to see, is this a Perl? Is this what? Is this? So it would. You could take the idea further than why this blanket state event could be used for multiple things. You could have an announcement for artifact created or composition defined. That's basically also an announcement. So yes, you would have less events in the Eiffel structure, but it would be very complicated to consume them. That's my prediction, at least from previous experience.
Yeah, you would basically have to move. You would have to add one or more members in the announcement message to state what kind of announcement this is. So you would have an announcement published event that has the type ref updated, or source change updated, and then I don't see any point in that.
It's just an event, as any event.
Yeah,
that's sort of the issue with using artifact created and composition defined to describe a Git tag. You would have sort of a description language that tells you, oh, this was a tag that was created in this artifact, and we handled it this way, so forth.
Yeah, it's a good analogy, actually. Tags they're so important that they weren't having a special event for them, not using two other events, and you have to use two because otherwise the link types you won't be able to link things in the way you want, because the information itself is in the artifact created, but you need the composition to be able to link to it from other things in a reasonable way. So yeah.
So we have 4 minutes left. We should wrap up soon. Maybe just a look forward for what should we do with this next. I don't think we should scrap it. It's an interesting idea, so we should continue talking about it. One thing that I think would help me, as I more or less mentioned before, I would like to see a more one-to-one mapping picture, or maybe some structure of what the exact parameters are in these events, so it's easier to understand where is what modeled, so to say.
In the pull request, or in the not the pull request, the issue, I have some basic scaffolding around which what I think might be a good fit for event parameters and links and so on.
Okay.
I think that and a number of additional examples. I mean, the squash merge example is good. So that we look into a number of use cases / scenarios and make sure that we can piece things together with the new event schemas.
Yeah. If we go to the issue and just post some use cases and see if we can model them around. So if those use cases are welcome.
Yeah.
It's difficult to think of everything.
Yeah. I mean, we can definitely crowdsource that stuff and then have a workshop, maybe a monthly community meeting, for example.
For me, it's a viable way to chisel out ID. Try to make them fail. See if they hold up to those. So more use cases.
Look into the what do they call the different merge strategies? Is that what they're calling, Garrett? The fast forward merge, or the rebase always, or rebase when needed, and those things.
Yeah.
Those different scenarios should be good to also see what would happen with those in this. I'm not saying that we can cater for them in a very good way in the current schema, but anyway.
Yeah, that's basically one of the problems when a change is merged. So for merge always, you will create a lot of merge commits that are not directly linked to the change request, but have to be modeled as a change request. So I don't see. This is basically a model of Git. So what Garrett does is what happens in Git. What Garrett does is only Git. So I don't see a problem. But throw out use cases, and I will try to describe them with this structure.
Yeah, perfect. So thanks a lot, Sven, for this.
Yeah, thank you.
These ideas and the discussion. I hope it has been valuable for more than us few who has talked here. Thank you, Sven. So yeah.
And this is what I look like when I'm not behind a presentation.
Hi, Sven.